Oh, I look up at my TV in the studio. What do I see? I see AOC she's talking with her hands. She's got the sunglasses on, baby. Like she's walking in the sun just in her element. Like, girl, baby, girl.
She's hit the jet.
But here's the thing. She could be president. No, I know everybody laughs.
You could be president.
But I think this whole it'll be J.D. Vance and then it'll be Rubin. It'll be Trump in 2028. Yeah. It will forever be Republicans that win national elections. And I don't think it just ain't so as much as I might hope for it. But then I might start not liking the Republicans very much, kind of like how you just don't like the Yankees.
Well, yeah, you're right. The Yankees.
But this is the thing. I think there are a lot of folks who just don't like who's in charge. And I bring this all up because, joining us now for his regular biweekly visit, we have Alan Mendenhall. Alan, how are you, sir?
I'm good. It's funny that you would begin with sunglasses because in an attempt to be as cool as you two, I actually brought some of my own.
Yeah. Now, for the record, Alan, these are UV filtering for my computer screens, but I still think I'm cool in them. So I'm glad you joined us, guy. All right.
Okay, let's do the whole interview this way. But
I don't know that I can actually see what these things are.
Yeah, likewise. I got to monitor stuff. So with I bring up the AOC thing, and as much as the Democrats look like they're floundering before the midterms, it's not guaranteed. Like, who knows? And you bring up a great point this week at 1819 News about, how the two Supreme Court justices that many conservatives love, they ain't getting younger. And this could be a big issue.
Yeah. Well, of course, Alito and Thomas are our favorites if you're conservative. And Thomas is 78 and Alito is 76. And the average lifespan of a male in the United States is 76. So they're both on the other side of that line. I don't know what to do. They're pretty much irreplaceable. And we've seen from several other picks, including Trump's picks of Gorsuch and Kavanaugh and Barrett, that you're still just not going to be able to get an Alito or a Thomas, even when you get some good justices. Now, if you look at somebody like Barrett replaced Ginsburg. So people complain about Barrett, but if you compare her to Ginsburg and see what you're getting in terms of outcomes, it's a much different scenario. But the federal judiciary in general is old. I mean, the average age of the federal judges is 68. It's 65 for senators and 58 for members of the House. So, these federal judges, not just the Supreme Court justices, but these federal judges in general are getting up there. They enjoy life tenure. The phrase that you have your position for good behavior has been interpreted to mean you have your position for life. And I don't know. I just get nervous because I get nervous that we would have a different Democratic president. Maybe it's a President AOC or President Gavin Newsom or whoever it is in 2029. And who would replace someone like Thomas Alito? I don't know. It's terrifying to think about.
Well, and there's a good history. Well, good or bad, depending, I guess, on your perspective. But there is a long history of justices that do hold on too long, or they tend to reward the party you wouldn't think they wanted to reward. So you get these major shifts in where the court's going to go.
Yeah. And I mean, I think Ginsburg's the most obvious example of that. And if you were a Democrat and Ginsburg died during Trump's first term, you were probably pretty panicked. And it was no wonder that they were up in arms over Amy Coney Barrett's nomination, but they sort of blew all credibility with Kavanaugh. I mean, when we looked at the different judges that were being considered for that seat and Trump picked Kavanaugh, I thought, oh my goodness, he picked the squishiest of them all. And yet the Democrats went no holds barred on Kavanaugh and sort of ridiculous. I think they actually drew their playbook from what they had done to Roy Moore during the Senate race. And they thought, well, let's see if it'll work again. But they blew all their credibility protesting what was essentially the most moderate person Trump could have nominated. And so Barrett just sailed right through. But it's just a nerve-wracking time in a lot of ways. There are just so many things going on. But with the Supreme Court shifting our jurisprudence to the right in ways that are really, really important. When I say to the right, they're really just shifting it to a neutral position. They're shifting it to neutral methodology. It's just that we've had sort of embedded in the law a conservative disposition. The law is kind of naturally conservative as it is because it doesn't change easily, and it ought to change only through the legislative branches because that's where the people have their representation, and that's what originalism teaches. And actually, originalism is pretty much inherently democratic in the sense that you don't want unelected federal judges changing laws that people enact. When I go vote and I get my representative in office and I agitate for a law to be something or other, and the bill becomes law and I'm all happy. I want that thing to be law for as long as it can be law. I don't want just tinkering with it. It ought to be the legislature's role to change the law. Now, if something's blatantly unconstitutional, that's one thing, the Supreme Court or federal judge can strike it down. But making new law is not the role of the judiciary.
Right, and I believe you also bring up in this piece, this essay I'm looking at, that it's not just, and I've long been on this with, pardon me, I've been saying we could exhume George Wallace and his old bones would have more activity in the governor's office right now than what we currently got. That's true. But we saw it with Biden, and we're still seeing it now, with the very untimely death of Lindsey Graham at only 71, and Mitch McConnell constantly just missing in action. And Susan Collins of Maine running again. Like, there's so many examples of, like, it makes me want to just say, God bless Richard Shelby for getting out of the way.
I guess there are 4 toss-up seats, I think, that are in play for the Senate, and that could just swing the balance, especially if you do have somebody sort of squishy middle there on a nominee. So if the disposition of the Senate were to change after this midterm, and then the Republicans have just the narrowest of narrow majority, or worse yet, they lose it, and then Trump tries to get someone through and can't, we're in big trouble. So it's like, oh gosh, do you encourage these justices to retire while there's still a majority? I don't know. It's probably too late at this point, given how close we are to the midterms. But
yeah,
I'm just so nervous.
Do you think it shouldn't happen officially? Never should. It would be improper to find a justice at some dinner somewhere and be like, when are you retiring, man? But do you think that does happen?
I'm sure somebody says it. I mean, I'm sure in the closest circles of friends, they say it. Now, if you gave me dinner with Scalia and Alito and we sat I'm probably not going to bring it up. Probably not going to bring it up. But I'm sure their close friends and family bring it up, or they bring it up to their friends and family. But it doesn't get out to the media that way. And that's a good thing. I think Nina Totenberg reporting on Alito's retirement was ridiculous because Nina Totenberg is, first of all, she's terrible. She is like one of the worst Supreme Court reporters ever. So for her to sort of arrogantly presume she had this inside information and then for NPR to run with it made me think, wow, I'm really glad we're not paying for this anymore. Glad we're defunding NPR because it's just ridiculous. And these national NPR reporters, Steve Inskeep, Nina Totenberg, they get paid so much, it's outrageous.
Now, you also last week wrote about the late, great Justice Antonin Scalia. And I've heard on the radio and all over, say, Bourbon, some great stories from our mutual friend, Judge Napolitano, about what a man this was. And it's got me thinking, of course, I would love to hear what your take is of this new book that James Rosen has out on Scalia. But in general, how much the personality and the dynamics of the court is, we often think in ideological terms or who appointed whom in terms of the parties. But I think sometimes these personal relationships and just the force of personality shapes the law more than we might suspect.
Yeah, I thought the book was really good at capturing Scalia's personality. The author, Rosen, you just mentioned him, had known Scalia not particularly well, not like Judge Napolitano. There's a particularly funny episode in the book of Judge Napolitano and Scalia arguing over pizza because they're both these Italian guys with very strong opinions who are very vocal, and they are arguing over the quality of pizza. And I just love that scene. And actually, Judge Napolitano falls into Molly Hemingway's latest biography of Alito, too. So Judge Knapp's getting some shout outs here in these bios. He knew these these justices well and is a great person himself. And I really am grateful for his friendship. But yeah,
Yeah.
Scalia's personality is larger than life, and his friendship with Ginsburg is improbable. I mean, they were close friends despite the fact they had very different views about the law and about politics, and they both loved opera and bonded over stuff like that. And they traveled together. There's this famous picture of them riding an elephant together, which is somewhat ridiculous. But yeah, the other thing that I thought was interesting about the biography is some of the misfires early in Scalia's career when it came to wanting to bond with some of the other justices on the court who were older, and they didn't really like Scalia when he was young, and they thought he was just this kind of haughty young go-getter. And they had this Federal Society hit list where they outlined the clerks and said, gosh, we make sure these clerks are, if they're Federal Society, that we've got them on our radar because they're on the bad list. Pretty shocking stuff.
And I know you have participated in the Federal Societies for so long. I almost wonder with this when you look back at the achievements, number one, of the Federal Society, especially with the makeup of the current court, and hopefully how much it can play a role, because it did used to be like it was a bad word in, say, Washington, D.C. circles, right? Especially around the old court.
Yeah, it's so funny. We talk about the Overton window shifting, but I remember when I was first involved with the Federal Society. So I started the chapter at my law school. I don't know if it had gone defunct or if I was the first person to found it. I can't remember those details. But then when I moved to Montgomery and I was working for Chief Justice Roy Moore, and the Montgomery chapter had gone defunct. And so I thought, well, I'll revive that one as well. And it was famously created by Jack Park and Bill Pryor when Bill Pryor was Attorney General. So it was a prestigious chapter, and we revived it and started running luncheons every month. I just stepped down after 13 years in June, and my friend Matt Clark took over. But when I first started walking around in Federal Society circles, you weren't supposed to put it on your resume because people might blacklist you, or they might think you are some conspiracy person, part of this right-wing conspiracy. And people were always talking about the Federal Society in these very negative ways. Now, the Federal Society is considered kind of moderate, like by a lot of reporters, and the commentariat that used to treat the Federal Society as this vast right-wing conspiracy now thinks of the Federal Society as being, well, they're pretty moderate. There are a lot of academic types and people that read books, and that's not so scary anymore. But I find it interesting. I know there was a sort of a notorious falling out between President Trump and Leonard Leo, at least rhetorically, last year. But by the same token, President Trump's nominations and his key picks for the federal judiciary up and down from district to circuit have been mostly drawn from Federal Society circles. And that's because over time, people got less ashamed of being a member of the Federal Society and realized this is really a constructive network. This is something that's helpful to be a part of. You learn the different policy and legal debates. You get involved in your local chapter or in practice groups. You have faculty advisors. You have student chapters. And so it's really an intellectual movement more than anything. It does not take positions. And that's why whenever it has panels at its National Lawyers Convention or even at local chapter movements, when it has panels, they always put a voice that is oppositional. They always want to include one left-wing voice on a panel. And I think that's important because debate is central to who the Federal Society is and what it is. And debate is really central to what our republic has been about as well.
Now, something you mentioned earlier, like with the Trump picks that to fill the court, a lot of them haven't been as conservative as we thought. Why do you think that keeps happening? Is that maybe just Trump's made mistakes, or for some reason, for instance, the Brett Kavanaughs of the world always just end up on the top of the pile? If you're the establishment guy, you tend to be rewarded.
Yeah, I suspect that will change if Trump were to get a new nominee right now. Let's say if Thomas were to retire today, I think you might see somebody slightly different in profile. But historically, in order to get any votes from the moderates or any Democrats, you had to have pretty much an impeccable pedigree, and you had to have those Ivy League boxes checked, and you had to have clerked for the best federal judges and have written for the Law Review. And things like that, which I'm not sure would be the case today. I mean, Justice Thomas famously hires people from non-Ivy League schools, and I think that's great. He hires the clerks he thinks are the best, not necessarily the clerks that just have the right resume or whatever. And it's, to me, impossible to imagine a confirmation like Scalia's. We talked about Scalia a minute ago. He was confirmed 98-0.
Right.
So unanimous. And part of that was because the Bork hearings were so tumultuous and there was a bad taste in people's mouth. And I think a lot of people in the Senate just said, let's do something and get along. But also, Scalia wasn't very controversial when he came in. He was this University of Chicago law professor, a former University of Virginia law professor. He had been general counsel of the Office of Telecommunications Policy under Richard Nixon. And it's like, wow, what does that office even do? Like, so people just weren't that up in arms about Scalia. But now it doesn't really matter who the nominee would be. If President Trump were to nominate this person, or if any Republican, frankly, were to nominate this person, the left would act as if it would be a fight to the death. And quite frankly, if it were the other way around and a Democrat were to do the same, I think it would be treated the same way. And it's because this bifurcation between left and right has become more pronounced. We're seeing the DSA take over the Democratic Party. Marxism and communism and socialism are becoming mainstream. And so I really believe that the left, it's not the right, I think, that has radicalized or gotten more right. I mean, if you just look at a chart that shows the growth of the federal government over time since like the 1960s, it's irrefutably growing. I mean, there's nothing, it's just massive growth. And then you look at the national debt, we're almost at $40 trillion. And you look at all even the social conservative, check the box, whatever category you want to check, it's clearly a movement to the left. And now that we have socialism and communism on the table among Democrats, I don't really know what to say other than, politics is going to get uglier.
Do you think they'll actually, I guess we can end on this, do you think they will actually take over, like in the way Trump reshaped the Republican Party, or is this just the label of socialism so toxic to the average American they aren't even going to touch it?
Well, I think in certain jurisdictions, they may be able to take over. So in your New Yorks, in some of your blue states, I'm reminded in graduate school studying Louis Althusser as a French communist. And he had this notion of ideological state apparatuses. And that was like the media, political parties, schools, hospitals, trade institutions, religious institutions, you name it, all the systems, all the institutions. And in his view, these things were what led to hegemony. They institutionalized whatever prevented the working class from taking over the capitalists. And so they wanted to capture these. And over decades of planning and strategizing, the left sought to take over the elite institutions. The Long March to the institutions was a real thing, and it was a blueprint. You could go out and read it. It wasn't like it was hidden. And they successfully captured a lot of institutions. The Smithsonian Institution is one example. It's got a lot of residual Marxism in the exhibitions. And so do I think they can take over the Democratic Party? Yeah, I think they've been trying to do it for 50 years.
Right. Yeah. It's just going to be fascinating to watch because they do seem rudderless or leaderless.
Yes,
and that vacuum is ugly right now. And where he should be, because it's not like Trump and the Republicans have the greatest marks ever, especially with this war, just kind of just grinding on and grinding on. I don't know. What a weird time. It seems like the nation's just exhausted with all this.
It does. And as the bifurcation, as I say, gets more pronounced, not just between right and left, but between red states and blue states, I'm looking at the happiness going on in red states. I'm looking at the economic prosperity in red states. I'm looking at the football programs in red states, and I'm putting these back on because I'm ready for this bifurcation. We're going to dominate these. We're going to have some red state domination.
Folks, the future looks bright. It does.
That's why we wear sunglasses. That's why we wear our sunglasses,
Yeah.
Well, Alan, I always appreciate your time. If folks want to follow you, check out your work, how can they do so?
Probably just go to my website at www.alanmendenhall.com. I threw the www back in there, Joey.
It's all good. I like a classic. Well, appreciate you, Alan.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Alan.
Again, folks, Alan Mendenhall, always love.